should be live. Good morning. Hey, Duca. Hey, Dot. How you doing? My apologies. It started a little earlier and then got sidetracked. Okay. So I do have actually the chat screen pretty much below me on the camera now, so which is good. I got that figured out. You know, you don't hit go live for a couple of days, and you start to get disoriented with things. To get all back into it. Okay, so Friday we did the coding challenge, which was actually a good success. Got that done. Not perfect, but did get. I actually did. The author of the challenge actually reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Saw you did the challenge, and if you do any more, let me know. I'll promote them for you," which was very nice. So in the end, on a branch, I got it working with a bit more complicated behavior. I got the actual commands being dealt with, so individual commands would be handled, and the actual application came down to, you know, that. So yeah, he reached out. He's like, "I saw you did it." And, yeah, if you do any more, let me know. I'll promote them in time, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I didn't expect that to get any sort of coverage, but it did. So from other people. So I have for right now put the coding challenges behind a points collection. Reason being, I don't know if everybody was really engaged with the idea of doing the coding challenge, and I don't want to make the stream divert regularly if the entire stream isn't behind it. So I've put it behind a points thing where which might be a little cruel, because I think that Sarav, although Sarav did join in Twitch as well, collecting those points is pretty hard on 2 hours a day of streaming. But we'll see. Maybe we'll adapt that a little bit or schedule it. But for right now, I've put it behind a points wall, because I don't want to, as much as I love doing it, and it was a good challenge, and I would recommend it to anyone else, I really don't think it's good to divert the stream, or more precisely, me, from doing what I'm trying to get done. So yeah, that's that. So today we return back to Agile platform. The goal will be to try and move this forward a little bit further. And in the next couple of days, I hope to have a conversation with my friend regarding next steps, next stories, etc. So I can kind of get a better plan on what it is I'm doing with the project, and which pieces we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually work with him to decide stories a little bit, and then the goal would be I'd tag some of them as streamable, right? So those stories are the ones I would focus on specifically, but if he wanted to pick up other stories, he could do. So that's kind of the goal there. So when I bring up space, etc., once we start discussing that, and you see stream tags attached, and it's just me making sure that's set up. So hopefully everyone had a nice couple of days. whether you celebrate Christmas or not. For us in the US, it was a long weekend, regardless of whether you celebrate, but hopefully it was a nice one. Okay, so last week, move work items to SQL Server DB. Let's make sure that's finished up. I've been watching a lot of videos. I've been reading a lot of stuff, and increasingly a lot more stuff with regard to event sourcing, event streaming, clean code, clean architecture, all those sorts of things. As I'm growing the application, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not setting my ways, right? I keep reviewing what I'm doing for the purpose of improvement. I saw a link earlier on today, and it made me think about what I would do differently regarding code organization. So let's, yes, I did merge it. Okay. So I merged the branch for the SQL Server work. So the right now the work items application is using SQL Server. Although again, the point is you wouldn't tell, which is good. Okay, so one of the things that it raised was this sort of structure, right? So I seem to align on clean architecture in one respect. I call this application layer. Domain would be another level beyond this, as far as I can tell, clean. But the thing is that I'm structuring is I'm calling these commands and queries. Right, I'll try and find the image. It's a Milan Jovovich on YouTube that I was looking at. YouTube.com. But it got me thinking about Milan Jovanovic, I believe. Apologize if I just completely destroyed that name. But he's posted a few. Yeah, here we go. Oh, come on. So it got me thinking about how to do things differently, right? Because again, I mean, I'm not trying to align to an architecture, but in the same, I'm not against. So this is, I understand this, because Uncle Bob, Robert Martin, when he did his talks, he talks about how this is not very helpful, but this is very helpful, right? In terms of how you lay things out, because this is just all technical stuff, whereas this is the actual thing. So if you need to go, and I suppose it's kind of why I'm doing the CQRS style in the first place, right? And I've deviated into doing this through whatever other methods. But it did get me thinking about, how I'm breaking up my application in general, right? So if I was doing this in a more granular form, then this might be tickets, right? In which case, these are kind of the technical things underneath, because it's great showing this and this, but the application layer in clean architecture should express intent as part of the application core and contains use cases. Don't disagree. However, there is no parallel, right? There's no there's another word I can't think of right this second, and that's kind of what's making me think, okay, well, I get this, I get the idea. Hi, Essa, how you doing? So, right, do we do application users, commands, queries, exceptions, services, behaviors, data? Do we group it? Do we subcategorize it? Thank you so much. Yes, I think it should be in the form of use cases. So I get this, right? So I wanted to think about how would I apply it to what I've got so far, right? Because right now my brain is, but again, my brain is thinking in terms of commands regarding work items, commands regarding application, right? I am thinking about that, right? So if I was to change this up, actually, let's create a new branch, feature, clean, rework. Let's make sure we don't make a mess there. So what we're saying is we create tenants and we create users. And then would we create a commands folder? And then these go under there. The structure of commands contacts is old style. This structure is a little closer to vertical slice. Yeah. So that would be, you still have to organize it. I've seen lots of different ways of doing some of this stuff, and this person in particular, right? Whereas I have commands where everything's underneath there, he'd have register new tenant command, register new tenant handler, register new tenant verification, etc. So everything would be underneath underneath the. So these get very lengthy. Contracts doesn't fit anything. Tenants, infrastructure. This is where this sort of stuff it gets difficult, because you kind of, it's like the controller problem, right? The controller problem being that when you have defined categories, tenants, users, etc., at some point you have something that kind of could fit in one and kind of could fit in another. So what a developer will do is they'll put it in the first one that makes sense for them. But does that make sense for everybody? That's my thought. So where does tenant user was registered go? Tenants or users? Because here we do have, so I suppose in this case, if we had subscribers underneath each, and we had, if we kept with the same tenant user was registered, that's the tenant part, I believe. But again, it's a tenant user. So it is a user, it's not a tenant, right? But if we went with that sort of thing, right, why are we doing it, I suppose, is the question. But we do get into that controller problem where we kind of have now buckets under which to put things. Do we have tenant users, right? Do we create a tenant users section, or is it tenants and users? So the use case is I've assigned a user to a tenant. So in that effect, that's a tenant-based thing, right? But will everyone understand that? And this is kind of what I mean when I say the controller problem, right? The controller problem is just one of organization, because we tend to not want to expand the footprint of the controllers. We don't want to expand the number of controllers. We want to expand the footprint of an individual controller, which is why why endpoints help me. because each endpoint forces me to think about what I'm actually working with. Now, you don't think of tenant users outside of the tenant, so, but this is a concern of user, right? Good day, Kenny. How you doing? How was your weekend? Dota must not be paying attention today because normally Dota would have some good opinions on this stuff. I feel pseudo productive. That's all you can do. Better than not productive. Nice. How's that going? Well, I hope. I'm not trying to distract you. I'm just might be less motivated today. Who knows? Talking about motivation, over the weekend I actually started working a little bit. So I want to put some features into the bot, and I was watching some streams working on webhooks and bot code in general, and I'm like, surely this isn't as messy as this. This needs to be cleaner. So I started implementing webhooks, and I actually I created 102 files in the space of just a few hours, and didn't build anything because I couldn't. It was all in pieces, and then finally got to testing it and got it working. So I was like being really productive on the bot stuff. Twitch does actually have some good tools for testing your webhooks, at least, even if the documentation is all over the place. I decided to rework the whole GIF library because I hate how they do stuff. Yeah, so I had I got the chance to sit down and do some of that while I was waiting for food and whatnot over the weekend, and yeah, I was just in a good zone. It felt really good. I was just throwing code out, and I got a load of stuff done. So, but I didn't want to. I don't like doing that sort of bot dev when it's really freestyled on stream, because if I get stuck, it gets really not interesting for anybody. At least with this stuff, I can discuss what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how I'm organizing code, and they're real challenges almost. But yeah, it was so basically by the end of the month, I should have a bot library with the ability to say, "Hey, I care about webhooks," and register the webhooks and get them working, which means that then I can put them into the stream. Testing those is going to be hard in live scenarios because you can't test every single event. There's dozens of them, but I can subscribe to things like notifications and whatnot, and then give that a test, and then put some more features into the stream because I've got a few ideas there. I know that stuck feeling, especially when you can't debug it right, because every second you leak your stuff. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I don't so much mind being stuck, and especially don't mind being stuck on stream necessarily, because I think it's representative. It's just when it's stuck on something that's kind of simple for some people. Like your math problems the other day were not simple for anybody. They were actual genuine challenges to overcome on the stream. But that was fun to watch. If a little painful because you're struggling at times, and yeah, it's never easy to watch someone struggle when you can't help. But yeah, there's just certain things on stream that are difficult to bot stuff can get kind of, for me, I worry too much about the design, and I start. It just kind of gets stuck in a hole on the bot stuff, and then it loses lacquer, and I'm bored of it because I'm not that creative to begin with. So anything creative, I have to be careful with. My math problem wasn't simple. I really thought it was basic 12. Not really. I mean, it wasn't so much the math that you had. You didn't have the math wrong in the end, right? It was kind of like coordinate systems and translating them that was the actual problem. Your math wasn't necessarily wrong. But yeah, so anyway. So I'm gonna get so do I want to do this? Do I want to commit to doing this, right? So a tenant was registered. This is clearly a tenant concern, right? If I commit to doing this, I've got to do it, right? Specifications. Okay, so specifications. This is kind of so here we have an application. We have all the different layers, right? Users, gyms, payments, workouts, activities, memberships, etc. Right? I get this, right? They're use cases, right? So again, tenants, we create tenants. Users, we create users. A bit meh. I mean, the math in the end was 3 lines high anyway. No, no, no. Okay. Um, tenant identifier from user identifier spec. So that's a tenant user to a tenant. So what do you do with things like this that kind of span, right? So entity by identifier specification is a general specification. It takes any entity that has a public identity, right? Notifications, okay, I can get that, right? For your notifications. Kani, thank you very much for the sub. You didn't have to do that. I know the ads are buggy, but thank you. Oh, my apologies. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate the sub. Um, okay, so notifications wise, tenant was registered. That's a clear win, right? That goes in tenants. User was verified. That goes in users, right? Um, tenant user was registered. Tenant user was verified. Okay, so these two, I believe they're still tenant concerns. Let's put them there for now. And that's the beauty of this stuff. And this is why you shouldn't be afraid to do this, right? So I've established an application. And I've not got a plan here. I'm moving things around to see how they feel based upon some other advice, right? I'm not I'm not committed to it necessarily. I can undo the change, but I'm willing to do it because it's for the good of the application in the long term. Now, is this because this fits with someone else's expectation of what the software should be? Maybe, but other people would read it that way as well. So, and that's the most important thing, right? The consistency of how I write the code, how I structure the code, um, is very important. But it's also how presentable is it to someone else, right? If someone comes in and I get it, I get the argument why. If someone comes in and sees tenant management application, commands, queries, etc., they've got to go hunting through, right? And I've attended Uncle Bob's course, right? I've been through this conversation. I've sat through people debating the necessity of this, right? And I get it. I don't know why I didn't do it. Probably for this very reason, in that at some point my brain starts with the actual technical components over the use cases themselves. Because here I don't necessarily have use cases. I have top level items. And again, we kind of start to group things and then make rationalizations for that grouping. So is tenant users a use case? I still don't know. Where do specifications like this live? I still don't know, right? But we're going to keep cleaning it up. Okay, so we got rid of commands. Workflows, that goes in there. Workflows is a concept I'm adding. Right. That's me basically creating something that will fire off multiple actions. And these two files don't honestly live here in the long term. They live out in something else. Actually, shared. Let's do workflows. Actually, let's follow the same pattern. Workflows. This is a use case, but they are definitions for workflows. Okay, so let's readjust all the namespaces. So if I didn't break anything, we still should have some passing tests, right? There you go. Now, there's not a lot of testing there, so it's not exactly thorough, but that's the principle, right? I should be able to run unit tests even after a major refactoring, because you shouldn't change the test if I'm changing the code around. I should just change the code around, and then if it's just moving it around and not changing the actual code, then the unit test should pass anyway. So how do I feel about that? Still think it's going to trip me up, but it is cleaner, and it does again represent the application better. So I do want to know those what would we do with these? So tenant identifier from user identifier is taking a tenant user identifier, a tenant user, and pulling the user to get the user identifier and getting the tenant to get the tenant identifier. So it's joining the two together. Ultimately, it's to get the tenant identifier from a user. So I kind of believe that that specification lives in tenants. Being that I did put the tenant user stuff in there, specifications, let's move that one in there. Users, specifications, user by email spec. That's a little easier. And that one is a generic one. So I'm going to leave that at the top level. Right? Contracts. So this probably doesn't, the fact that I'm challenging this suggests that this doesn't live where I think it should live. So the way this is used is, this is what I implement on the actual web layer here. Because I did not want to make my applications know about Auth0, right? Maybe that's not right, but I can remember I've got a camera in front of me when I'm slouching back in my chair. So is it right to keep the Auth0 layer, the Auth0 components outside of the application and leave the application just dealing with user registry? Maybe. Obviously now this breaks up my... I don't hate that. I just still think there's some areas that don't feel natural. Contrast doesn't feel natural anyway. When I learn something in my years of development, there is no right or bad way. Okay, maybe there are a couple of bad ways, but there are also many right ways. Yeah, and that's generally my point, is it doesn't matter if someone says something is right or wrong. Everyone can have an opinion on what is right or wrong. There's a lot of books written, but if I spend all my time looking at what people say is the right way, there'll be another person saying they don't like it. And I was saying the other day, I was watching a video on event-driven architecture, and they were critical of hexagonal and clean, and those weren't the greatest patterns to be using. And there's always opinions on everything else, and if we get stuck on trying to create the perfect software layout, we're not going to get things done. So it's more practical to take what you like, build an application in a way that you can maintain it, than it is to actually take what someone else says. Most important thing to get good maintainable projects is to split your functionality in good pieces and your interfaces away so that they're not bound to your business logic. Yeah, I generally agree with that. It's not always easy to do, right? Good code organization is not always simple. And that's kind of my point, right? It's like, I get doing this makes sense, but in the same, there's things that don't fit. When those things don't fit as developers, if we think we have to fit them in there, then we'll jam them in there, and then they're lost. They cause more of a problem than, right? Because what I could do is create tenant users, but tenant users isn't a specific use case. Users are assigned to tenants. So is it a user or is it a tenant? They're not. It's not its own concept. It's not independent. But again, we then tend to align these with data tables, right? Mentally. So you've got to be careful when organizing this way, because you've got to identify clean use cases. And just because someone says they've got an idea of what clean use cases are, doesn't necessarily mean everyone does. And the next thing is to keep everything as simple as possible. And this is one of the hardest things, because at one point you start over engineering stuff. Yes, it's very difficult to stay simple at times, but it is an important thing to do. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. Yeah, but it's very important to follow that, right? Simple and extensible equals flexible, right? Make sure that you're... So the problem is as well, you think about extensibility. If you start thinking about that sort of thing as you're writing the code, you're going to write assumptions in there that are also damaging as well, which is kind of each one of these things. If you take it to a crazy degree, it becomes more damaging, right? If you start thinking about, oh well, I want clean code, but I want it to be quickly changed. I want to be able to swap my database out, etc. You're going to over-engineer by virtue of trying to achieve that one thing. And my general point is, don't be afraid to change this, right? You put whatever methods in place you need to give you the confidence, but don't be afraid to rework things. So let's visit this one. This one's the easy one, right? Because right now, this is tickets, right? So if we have commands, don't try to predict the future when you don't know the future coming to 100%. look that your code isn't blocking the future, but don't adapt to the future. That's a lot of developers do not can't just turn that off. It's why unit testing becomes so hard for a lot of people. Because with unit testing, you'll end up with well, I know what I need to do. Do you really? Like, pull it apart. Use um, the chance to analyze what you're doing. Right. That's the challenge. Not sure if view models lives in this layer, but for right now it is living in this layer. Queries. Do that. Doesn't have a folder. Don't predict the future is pretty much one of the hardest things that I've ever had to come across with every single developer. You'll either get them trying to, and this is why I don't agree with trying to fill in gaps from requirements, right? If product teams are not able to deliver accurate requirements, then you shouldn't be filling in the gaps for them, right? Because if you fill in the gaps, you're making assumptions. If you're making assumptions, you're likely getting things wrong. Okay, so here's a challenge, right? So notes, I think, is a separate piece. TDD unit testing is about defining methods for by the customer of whatever you are building. It's not about predicting anything. But it is about writing the code. And if you're going into writing tests based upon what you believe you will need, then you're going to write the wrong test. Enough wisdom spread. Need to stop procrastinating my OAuth 2 implementation. Yeah, get on with that. But it's not about predicting anything necessarily. It's more that developers tend to say, "Hey, I know what I'm doing. I know what I need to do," and they try to write what they feel they need to do, and not focus on what is actually the implementation. It's kind of like the classic demonstration of TDD, right? Is, hey, I need this, and this, and then like Uncle Bob in his videos, right? He'll show you, I need this, and this, and he'll actually write the tests in the right way, but analyzing each step and what he thought he needed and what he needed were two different things to achieve the same thing, right? So achieve the outcome, there was less involved. So that's what I'm saying, really. I'm not saying about predicting, but developers do tend to, hey, well, what if they need this, and what if they have a problem with this, and that's why you end up with defensive programming, right? You end up with developers throwing in ifs and throw exceptions, and, oh, what if this happens, and let's put a try catch around this, right? They tend to try and make the code resilient to whatever the user might do. I've seen a lot of that in my time, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just it's the way that they're taught, and when you've got product teams that are willing to let them do that, the problem just kind of continues itself. Add new support ticket. That's getting renamed. That's a horrible name. Add note for ticket goes into the notes commands. Add new support ticket validator. Do I put I'm going to put validators here now, because validators doesn't need to live under commands. And is that validators or validation? I don't know. This is getting renamed no matter what. Add support ticket. Refactor this, adjust namespaces. Tests. This one's got a few more tests attached to it, so Okay, still have tests passing. There's only 7 tests in the actual consumers part of it. So there's 23 tests in here for tickets and notes. And again, that was the right thing to do because I don't refer to it as adding new support ticket in the test. I refer to it as adding a ticket, right? And that's the actual the verbiage I use. So add support ticket makes more sense. Oh, yeah, resilient. I made a data parser that can handle a lot of different data formats because different teams cried about they need this endpoint with this data format minimum. And because they are in much bigger teams with slower time to change speed, had to adapt because I'm fast and reliable. In the end, I could accept almost all standard formats. Yeah, I mean, building tools for other teams is definitely going to be a different. You have different challenges there, but yeah, it's I think that's the sort of thing that you rapidly develop as well, and then it ends up being a little bit one of those projects that's no one wants to touch because then it becomes fragile, um, or it becomes specialist. So it's we can't do anything about that. That person's on PTO. So yeah, okay. So how do we feel about this right this second? But yeah, with the unit tests, this data pass would be possible. I think most things are possible with tests. I think it's just a case of pivoting what your expectation of what the unit test should be is, and making sure that you can. I mean, you can test most things in one way or another. Some are a little bit more dangerous, right? If you have um, integration tests with commerce stuff, you've got to make sure you're working with test systems, etc. If you're working with um, certain types of data, then it's a little harder. But yeah, yeah. Without unit tests, this code would stay like this forever because no one will touch it ever again, probably surviving me. Even with unit tests, you get people that are scared of touching the code base, but it's well written unit tests, whatever they look like, right, are are important. And again, I don't care if my unit tests meet what your expectation of a unit test is. They meet what my expectation of a unit test is right now. They give me confidence in my code, and they allow me to verify the functionality. If I'm missing something, that's on me. And if I'm working with somebody else, then again, like Delta and I were talking about last week, right? I have, you know, I respect the people I'm working with in so much as we adapt the code to be the code base that we want it to be, not the code base that everyone outside of us thinks it should be. So it's more about getting along and making sure we're productive in the same code base. So maybe there's different standards, maybe there's different practices, maybe there's different patterns we can adapt or learn. But and the bigger the code base gets, the harder that gets. But it should be, yeah, it should be the code base of the team, not the code base that everybody outside of the team thinks it should be. Okay, so I procrastinated long enough. I got this for feedback from projects I had to pass, and they love the testing. And in my opinion, to get a good maintainable project, tests are the number one. It helps to find dependency problems in your classes and helps to evolve them without breaking stuff. Yeah, agreed. Is an add support ticket a command? I think this is a use case in itself. Therefore, create a folder named add support ticket and add. I would create 2 classes named add support ticket command and add support ticket command handler. I wouldn't separate commands and queries because they are all use cases. Okay, so I do not. I kind of like Jimmy Borgard's approach to this, right? So, okay, so to you, add support ticket as a use case, so it would be a top level item. So even that would differentiate from that. because he's put grouping use case again. This is the problem, right? Use cases by category essentially, right? This looks more like what I had. This looks a little bit more like what I have now, right? Add support ticket. So the way that this works is the command sits underneath this object, right? The handler is a component. Handler and command are both classes underneath this one class. Reason being, I like this style because you don't have the clutter of command and handler because they're never separated. You don't switch out the implementation of the handler. So it's a safe assumption that they can always live together. This pattern is me. I don't like this. It's a shortcut in as much as I don't have to do new command. So this one actually, let me remove that because I don't use it in unit tests either because you can't use that in unit tests. Let me find where that breaks. Yeah, so that's just a shortcut for that. But I wouldn't separate commands and queries because they're all use cases. So from a logical perspective, like visibly, that helps me. But I get where you're going there. So essentially, that would look like that. Tickets, add support ticket, delete support ticket, get tickets, update support ticket. What do you think? So I kind of like this structure. I get the top level, right? I totally understand that this helps readability, right? This definitely helps get into the things you need to go at. And again, I'm sure we'll hit the problem of the controller problem later on, right? I'm certain of it. In fact, we already have with tenant users essentially. Yeah, I'm more aligned with that than I am. Because just mentally, it helps me to visibly separate them. And again, breaking these down means there's fewer of these files at each level. So, yeah. See, again, I'm mixing and matching the advice people give, right? I'm taking what I like and trying to adapt it to what fits for me. Huh. Okay. So let's. Yeah, I'm going to leave that like that for right this second. We'll I didn't rename anything. Okay, but I get the point. Again, this is still bugging me. I don't like the fact that they now sit out there. Contracts, I kind of get that probably shouldn't be in there. That's the smell. Specifications, that's a general specification that is used by both. So, do I have a shared specifications library? Where's this defined? iPublic identifier. That's defined as shared contracts. So does this go in as shared specifications? Maybe it does. Maybe that's why we move that right now. Because we have that contract there. So let's move that there. That gets rid of one. Moving it the way I just did, I should have identified breaks as well there. Oh, okay. Rider, keep track of that then? Huh. Okay, so we're down to one there. And again, if talking about use cases, again, tenant users is still the one that's straddling the bounds of sense, right? It's like it belongs to tenants, but it also belongs to users to some respect. But it's always in the case of the tenant that I'm using it. So, and again, these are just kind of adapters as far as providing me some sort of interface to use to interact with this and the search. That will get to at a later point because that's not something I want to be doing that way. Okay, I'm gonna commit this. I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna commit to doing this way. Reorganize application tickets, work items. Work items may actually become tickets later on anyway as a top level item, depending on how complicated things like the workflows get. Because again, these are still pretty big groups as is. On part 4 of my Build Your Own SQL tutorial now. Nice. Bugs me. Does your sub badge appear for you, Dota? Or is it a white outline? Oh. It bugs me because on Friday I saw it. Oh man, two posts in start but appears. Okay, yeah, it's a Sega Genesis controller. Edits 9650 in YouTube. So what is best Python JS? That's entirely what you want to be productive with. Thanush, hello, how are you doing? I'm going to say Thanush. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Welcome. I deliberately have the YouTube and the Twitch chat stacked on top of each other, and I still missed the fact that the screen moved right below my eyes. I apologize. So whether that was a general comment or whatever edits, I mean, again, languages are just languages, right? They have some benefits. Some will help you learn, some will not. If your brain works well with structure, then Python is pretty good. JavaScript natively does not have types, so learning those concepts is not easy using JavaScript, but you can still learn. So it's whatever helps you learn. Okay, let's push this. I'm gonna push this, merge it, and we're gonna commit to this style for right this second, because I've procrastinated enough. Because what I'm actually putting off here is actually something a little bit more challenging than it might look at first pass. Yeah, let's go with that. Update. Delete the branch. Clean rework. Delete. Okay, so let's go back to space. So as always, anyone joining, my goal on the stream is not to necessarily get stuff done. It is more about getting things done while discussing how it's happening and what we're doing with it. So, okay, general work. So what I'll do is I'll finish this piece of the work and then we'll call this done. And then in the new year, I will try and hold 2 sprints. This does have the concept of sprints that I should have done from the start. So that's why it's called general work. But yeah, as a user, I should be able to assign a status to a ticket. So this is a little harder than it looks at first glance, because it's not, it doesn't fit neatly. And this is kind of the point, right? This is the point of me doing this on the stream, is to show that not everyone has answers to all the challenges you face in software development, right? I don't care if I've been doing this a long time. It doesn't mean I'm an expert at every single piece, right? That should be very apparent. And I'll never be an expert at every single piece, because there's just so much to learn. There's so many different opinions and ways of doing things. And that's kind of what we've been talking about today, right? Is the whole, how do you know what's right? How do you know what's wrong? You don't. So you got to develop software, right? That's the key. Let's do a new branch, and this would be feature key 23. Assign status to ticket. Okay, so right now a ticket can be open, in progress, or closed, right? And discussing it, we're going to create an email server and use a patch and make notable. So here's the challenge here. I want to assign a status, but I have an API that looks like this, right? Tickets, support ticket notes, right? And even that should be notes. All right, that now aligns with the backend notes and tickets, right? Augustine, hello, how you doing? Okay, BRB, Monster, sorry, Delta, I didn't see that. Hey, Grumpy, how you doing? What's all this then? This is me being opinionated again. Happy Boxing Day. Happy, just another work day. Dear. I wish I had Boxing Day. Good. I took the week. When I'm not going anywhere, taking the week off is kind of like me. I'm not going to be very productive this week, right? So I might as well sit here and be available if I'm needed, which I won't be, so I'll be fine. Okay, so this is me kind of, again, faffing and procrastinating and waffling on about things. I have one of those, if you don't use them, you lose them jobs. Ah, gotcha. Okay, I've got one of those, hey, you've got unlimited PTO jobs. Which is a lie. It actually does the reverse of what you're doing. So for those joining, for those new to the stream, welcome. What I'm developing here is an agile project management tool, right? That's my goal, right? So I'm building it as a part-time thing. Obviously, I'm just doing it on stream right now, but I am building it as an actual project that I would intend to release. So I'm treating it like it is 100% a product I would actually build, right? Going through all the pitfalls, all the challenges that come along with that. I have no deadline, I have no timeline, so it's not like I'm going to actually release the product, you know, in 6 months or whatever. But I'm trying to treat it like it would be, like I would be fully willing to release it had if things go well. Amal, good morning. How are you doing? So along the way, I'm going to struggle, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to have some fun with it, and I am going to hopefully share that with people who are watching, right? So if you have questions, you have thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, I reserve the right to ignore them, but the opinions primarily. But you know, I want to learn, I want to grow as well, and I want to share that with other people. So that's kind of why I'm streaming. The code for this is not available, but the some of the components that I've been building along the way, things like the Kafka components, etc. They are. I do put them on the GitHub repository, which should be linked in the panels below on Twitch. I laughed, I cried, I my pants. Doing good, just back from vacation. Oh, nice. Vacation is good. I made a large meal yesterday, sat down, fell asleep after. I didn't even eat that much turkey. But I woke up at 1 a.m. to walk 2 dogs. So yeah, the goal of the stream is basically sharing this development and going through this. So right now, what we're about to do is, and it's always good to have someone who also has opinions in the stream. Faffing is the goal. Yeah, it's kind of the thing, right? So I have the need to set the status of a ticket, right? But I've laid out my API endpoint like this, right? Delete, get, list, patch, post. As it always has been and always will be. That is streaming in general, though. Hi, sir. I am BTech first year. Please tell me a roadmap. A roadmap to how to learn, how to grow. Ah, so you listed verbs and set out to make them verb something. No, it's kind of a pattern that I kind of enjoy using, but obviously I'm coming up against a use case that doesn't fit that pattern very nicely. I know how I'm going to try and do it, but yeah. Continue with that job and one day YouTube will pay you a lot more money. No, the goal of the stream is not necessarily to make money off the stream. Is to make content that is actually useful for developers actually developing as well. So, and share my struggles, right? So I've been doing this for a while, for many years, and the assumption is that if you are older and doing this, that you know everything about software development and have all the answers. But there is no such thing, right? There's always learning, there's always growth, and it's a good mentality to get yourself into early on. It's not, if you've said, I learned HTML, I learned JavaScript, now what, right? You didn't learn HTML or JavaScript, you learned some syntax. Oh, you can troll in 2 places now. So it's about being improving and continuing to learn and grow with my skill set, with my ability, my understanding of what software is, and adapting. So yeah. So Kishan, a roadmap, you're just beginning. So best topic for JavaScript. About being font size. Oh, old eyes. You'll buffer them before. Butter. Oh, my accent, my pronunciation is better. So, I mean, if you're learning, if you're just starting out on everything, then you're going to be presented with so much content, so many different ways of doing things. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Worry about your understanding, right? Grow bit by bit, improve, write software. That's all that matters. Write software. Don't try and follow, because again, I started the stream off with this, right? So this is Milan Jovanovic on YouTube. He posts videos similar to Nick Chapsas, right? He's posting stuff like this all the time, and they're useful, right? I follow him, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this stuff, right? But if you're new to this, no, I do not understand Hindi. if you're new to this stuff, then it can be overwhelming because it can be, oh, well, I've now got to do this because this is wrong. I'm doing it all wrong, right? So you get stuck in this analysis loop of how do I change my code to do this? How do I do this? This person says I should do it this way. This person says this is wrong, right? In the words of my great uncle Bill, who said, this last time I spoke to him before he died, he said to me, don't let anybody tell you how you to do it. Do it sideways if you want. Yeah. Pragmatism is the key, right? That's kind of what I say, right? So it's be pragmatic about how you approach software development. Like Milan follows a lot of patterns, and he does put out a lot of content that is very much, it's really practical, right? Um, um, but it's again, as a new developer coming to this stuff, it can be really difficult to understand what is the right way to develop software. And the reality is, write software, write code. Just go out and write bad code that you don't know is bad until you reflect back on it. But I think it depends on your step of development. When you begin with dev, the folder structure, etc., doesn't matter that much. When you get more professional and start trying to do things more right, this would be another step in the right direction. But again, you're consuming that content though that says this is the right way to do it, but you don't understand why you're doing it, right? It's kind of like why I go with what it feels right, what works for the team, what works for you, not what works for everybody else, right? Don't worry about, um, what a book says or what a video says you should do, right? If you understand it, great, and it makes sense to you, great. If it resonates, then then you're on the right path, because obviously someone else is doing exactly what you're going to be doing, but you've got to make sure that you're writing code, right? You don't know what's bad until you've written it, right? Even now, I will look back on some code and I'm like, that's horrendous. Yeah. Yeah, the approach to code eventually reaches a point where you understand that the code you've written is primarily concerned with communicating with future human beings, but that it's a bit more endgame. Yeah, therefore it's a step. There is no right or wrong way. I saw a lot of projects that sliced for functionality, and have to say for small projects is absolutely fine. Yeah. And oftentimes, a legacy code, and this is kind of why, again, I say that you should not be afraid to change with the code, right? Do not be afraid of your own code, because a lot of legacy systems are legacy by age, but they're often legacy by the code that was in there because people are scared to touch it because there's rules and stuff that are scared, right? If you're constantly evaluating the readability, the flexibility, the cleanliness of your code, then changing it where it doesn't fit anymore, right? And you can do some of this stuff on the fly. It's not like you have to go and ask for permission, right? Because it's stuff that you can fix in place as you're doing other things, and you should do, right? As long as you know that you're not breaking the system, right? You guys are on fire today with with the content. Back-end developer roadmap from Nick Chapsas. One thing I should probably do at this point is say that there is a Discord that you are more than welcome to join. There is no. I should share the link in YouTube as well, because I'm bad at. I need to update panels and stuff on YouTube, I think. But there is a Discord you can join, and I will say that since Essa joined, the quality and quantity of links has increased steadily. Stay consistent. Don't mix stuff when you started it wrong. Stay wrong or change it as all. Never mix wrong and right stuff. Yes, but you should. I mean, that's where comments are kind of useful if you know there's code that you can't touch. Yeah, every single Discord. Everyone's got a Discord, right? That'd be a lot of noise if we all had one Discord, though. that's where, comment, if you can create a separation point, yeah. There's a, that's what Discord literally means. I know. Well, we can Discord in smaller groups on small servers, right? Rather than having one big server. Can you imagine the noise though? Thank you for that, Essa. Appreciate that being posted again. So, anyway, point I was, I went to 4 streams, yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's fun because software development's fun because everyone has different standards of what software should be, right? And it's always moving. It's why I don't believe that AI will ever make sense of software, right? Or write decent software. I think you can get some good hints, but I think the way that humans write code is to be analyzed by AI in general. It just doesn't. The subtleties of how we organize, how we change things, how we write things, how we name things. There's no real standard, right? People might say there's standards, right? There's ways that people have found that they like coding and they've shared with others and said, hey, this is a good way to code it. And some people have come along and said, hey, this is fine. And it was. And then you want to post that in Discord? to us, that just looks like stars because I think I block outright URLs because of yeah. So anyway, let's get to this because this is kind of yeah. The joys of links on streams. So, and this kind of this bundles straight through into this point, right? I've created this standard for myself where I'm using the verbs on the thing, right? Endpoints tickets, and I don't know whether I actually pulled this from watching Ardalis do this, or whether I kind of adapted this from them, or whether I kind of took what this structure looked like and then was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, I'll do this. But this does give me a problem in so much as to change the status. If I'm being RESTful, if you made the CRUD endpoints, your thinking will be in terms of CRUD endpoints. Yes. And that's the whole thing with the controllers, right? If you start bundling things into controllers, and the tenant user stuff before, right, you end up with this, I've got to fit it into something. Take care, Canny. Thank you very much for hanging out. The discussion. Been fun. Yeah. Canny, if you could post that link in the Discord, that would be really helpful. Unfortunately, not everyone has the right to post links. So yeah, if I'm going in the same pattern, right? Suppose this gets down into analyzing the use cases, right? You would not. Actually, over the break, by the way, I jumped up like 4 or 5 subs on YouTube. So thank you very much if you are new there. Amal asked me to stream to YouTube a couple of weeks ago because they can't get onto Twitch. And I set it up and it was easier than I thought it would be, getting the OBS to stream to the 2 platforms. The hardest thing is aligning Nice. Aligning the bitrate and resolution. So maxing the bitrate to Twitch and lowering the resolution for Twitch to YouTube's maximum resolution. That was a fun, because YouTube doesn't support streaming anything higher than 1440p. Whereas Twitch will let you stream in 4K, and every now and then it'll let you actually see 4K. It's a miracle this junk ever works at all. Yeah. So so it's a relatively new thing, but I hope that people are getting some value out of the YouTube stream. YouTube just need to do a bit more in terms of their tooling around chat and general interaction with streams. But anyway, CRUD. I'm using the verbs, right? So if I want to keep aligning to this, then I have to. So I've got two choices, right? I either change this up and start using endpoints for like update status. So if we're thinking of it that way, then update status is kind of an endpoint, right? And then post, right? So if we take use cases, right? So that's add ticket, that's get ticket, delete ticket, right? So if we think about them as use cases, then that's a little simpler, right? Do I like that? I don't like that. So if I go to patch, well, patch I could use to support changing whatever I wanted to change and do some sort of change stuff to figure out what changed. I'm tempted to go that path. Because then updating the status on a ticket is just literally changing the ticket and passing up the differences. Is that a good way to go at it? Not wholly convinced it is. So this is why changing the status might seem like a very simple thing to do. But based upon the structure I have so far, it's not quite as simple as it might seem at the first glance, right? Because it's literally setting an enumeration on a record. But there's way more to it than just changing enumeration on a record. So in CRUD layers of Christmas past, I use put for updating. Is there some consensus on put versus patch? Why did I do? Yes. So patch is when you're changing certain things, right? That's the idea of patch, right? So patch is made for changing the little bits. Put is when you're saying here's the latest version of the record. Is my understanding of how I would use it. Mr. Anhorn, good morning. Hope you're well. You had a nice Christmas. So I think patch is the right verb. I just don't know how to use it effectively right this second. Which again is just, you know, I see these either way. Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, the verb is just a piece of information. But again, and being this is the first time, right? It's more that in the future I'm consistent with that alignment, right? If I start using put on some and patch on others, that's bad, right? So if I'm consistently a patch is a partial update, a put is a full record, but in this case, a put wouldn't happen because it would always be parts of this that changed, potentially. So I can either go, the way I'm thinking about this, right, I can do this, right? So we have that, we have that, we have that. We made entire APIs with nothing but posts. Thanks, it was nice. Good. And then this will be, what will this be? This will be, in addition, they always return 200. I was not for this. Oh. But collaborative work is like that. True. It's, you don't always get to pick how things are done. So I want to represent. So this is a challenge, right? I want to represent. I'm going to put it as an enum right now, just for really ticket status open, in progress, closed. Right. So ticket status. Somebody got burned by returning a 403, so they overcompensate by always returning nothing but 200. And that's kind of that. What was it I was talking about before? Something similar, where that knee-jerk reaction and that the what ifs, right? The what if this happens? What if this? Oh well, that happened once before, and I know I need to do this now, and that way that developers just end up writing code. And I'm slouching again. I shouldn't do. Although you just see the top of my rather messy curly head. Using past pain to decide how future software should be written is in the negative, right? Not learning from it and growing and saying, hey, here's how we could avoid that, or here's how we could do that. But going back and say, oh, well, once this happened, so we need to make sure that can't happen. So let's put a try catcher on that. Or this could, trauma driven development, I suppose, yeah. Yeah, a very bad TDD. So if this object has all nullable fields, right, then this update support ticket command is going to be a little bit more difficult, right? Because I could have nullable data and I've got to make the decisions in the actual object. And I have not thought through this pattern, this design at all. I'm not doing this in a form of deliberate way. I'm deliberately kind of freestyling my thought on this. So if I'm completely wrong or it doesn't work at all, then or it's a mess, even worse. So if I do it that way and I pass in everything as nullable here, right, then I've got to kind of make the decisions as to what I'm updating, right? So that works, provided that null isn't a meaningful update. Yes, yeah, that's a challenge, right? Because if null means something, then you could wipe something out, but you should be able to wipe something out. So let's see. If we change that, then these can look like this, right? So these could look like ticket. Let's make them nullable so that they actually are. Custom name, description. So this isn't too hard, right? Because we can do ticket.custom name, ticket.description, ticket.review date. And like you said, if nullable means something, then we've got a bit more of a challenge because we've got to represent it, right? So we could do the same thing with status, right? You can't move it to an invalid status. You can't move it to it's not nullable. Does that? Does that work? And now, enums. Can't remember. Does enum support? Can I pass in that and it map to an enum? Or do I have to pass in the integer? I can't remember. Document-based data store? No, not right now. We swapped that out for SQL Server last week. So I was using Couchbase for this component. Worked generally nicely, but there were some challenges with how to actually configure data, set up collections, etc., that I didn't want to overcome right now. So in the interest of moving forward, I took a stream, switched out Couchbase for SQL Server, and got it done in 2 hours, which was pretty good. So this is not the final version, right? This is a get the pattern in place piece. I know that ultimately what I want to do is present more granular or more customizable levels of status, right? But in general, there will only ever be 3 types of status. So a ticket or a story or whatever will only ever be in open, in progress, or closed, right? Now, different boards would support different swim lanes, which means you could have a ticket that is open, but it's kind of pending review or something, or it's in progress. So the idea will be you'll actually label different swim lanes as one of those 3 categories potentially. At this point, that's kind of the design. So you kind of a status and a sub-status in the future. Now, this is what I'm focused on right this second is the tickets aspect. So this is more Kanban than it is regular Agile boards, sprint boards. So this is more 3 columns. It's either open, it's actually being worked on, or it's finished, and then archived would be outside of that, right? We're kind of building up on the concepts and understanding, because again, I've used these tools for years, but it doesn't make me a subject matter expert on these tools. And it's why I'm not doing any sort of domain-driven design, because or focusing on the DDD aspects, because I don't understand the domain strongly enough to actually pull those concepts out. And I'm not spending months trying to understand every single aspect of what it is to do this in order to become that subject matter expert, become that domain expert, and build those domain tools in that way. And this is the way most software develops, right? Because if you look back at any legacy system, it's someone's had an idea, they've written the code, right? They have not, don't be chasing waterfalls, they have not become intimate experts with every aspect of what they've done. They've built the software, they've taken requirements, they've tested it, they've updated it, they've put new stuff in there, and they've done it as quickly as they possibly can to try and get a product out the door, right? I would bet that most of the people in the chat who've worked on any form of software have experienced that. So it's not necessarily important for me to understand every aspect. What it is important for me to do is keep building the software in a way that I'm willing to change it. Otherwise, I'm going to build a piece of software that in the end looks like every other piece of legacy code ever written and is a mess. Oh, Grumpy's like, is he talking specifically about me? So, it is what it is. So let's, next piece. So I have the application, I have an enumeration. Now this is kind of a weird one, because this isn't just raw data, right? Or is it? It can be made. It can be made private. Yeah, this isn't just raw data. So how does it cross this bound, right? I assume I have to expose in here the enumeration. Yeah, and I have to map the enumeration. So are there rules about switching the states? At this point, no rules, right? Just being able to switch the state is part one. Because in this instance, this would be actually, hold on, I've got one more piece I need to now you made me think about that. So we have the assigned user. That needs to go in here as well. This is missing. So in this instance, do I fix this or do I create a story for it? Right? Assigned user is not a behavior here. So that means I'm missing a test. Right? Because I haven't, when ticket is updated as a general, yep, it works. Right? But I haven't checked to see if the ticket's reassigned, etc. Yeah, the current rule is, again, build. Right? Don't worry about what I don't know at this point. Just keep building and identifying further and further requirements based upon. So again, one of the things I'm doing here is building APIs. I'm not building a UI, right? And I think a lot of the rules come in when UIs become part of the piece, right? I don't know what I need until I actually try to literally, you know, is there a more pleasant term than dog food? I don't know. But at the point where I say, "Hey, space, you're out. This software's in," that's when I'm going to find the real rules. Cat food. Gourmet canine cuisine. Yes. I'm sorry. Chink the microphone. Yeah, I gotta. If I develop the UI too soon, I'm going to develop based upon what I think I need all the time. So my API is going to adapt. Developing the APIs first to at least support tracking tickets, adding notes, getting notifications, promoting tickets to become. So I have what I want to do is promote a ticket to either a story straight away, and the idea would be that everything comes along with it, right? So rather than having a ticketing system that has tickets that then you create a story for, and then everyone's like, "Where's that story?" Oh, I don't know. Who's looking after that? Oh, I don't know. Who needs to be notified, etc. Keeping the ticket essentially alive, but then promoted, and then everything goes with the when it becomes a story, everything goes with it. And I'm a hand talker, and I've got to be careful with it. Wait, but who does look after the story? The dev, right? Who does look after the story? The dev. Yeah, when it becomes a story, the developer gets it, right? The developer's going to work on it, right? And it might go into an interim stage, is my kind of thought so far. So there is a stage where it does need further review and identifying what actually needs to be fixed, because it started as a ticket doesn't mean not all tickets are bugs, right? All tickets source from the customer, but not all tickets become bugs because they're not actually able to be worked on. So, we closed and linked to the Jira ticket or whatever, right? And when a Jira ticket's been created, so what normally happens is you have an integration with your ticketing system that links to Jira or whatever platform you're using for the stories. But there's an evolution, right? There are tickets that are no longer tickets that become stories. So the idea would be that any notes added, any people involved in that ticket would still be associated with the story. So they'd be able to get notifications on the fact that the story is now in a different status, right? Increasing the visibility and also lowering the need for anybody to be chasing up and requesting things or tracking spreadsheets of where things lie, because now we've got, tying some bugs back to a story would be helpful. Yeah. And what is that instead? What I mean, a ticket's a ticket, 100%. Yeah. This is an alt account. Do you have a golden ticket there? Can factor into definition of done. Yeah. So increasing the visibility, increasing the tracking, increasing the making the history. So right now, again, there's no intention of adding deep rules about what a ticket can be, other than right now it's just collecting the data and building that understanding. So, going through these steps. So, yeah. So I'm going to basically create the same enum, but I also need to do. Okay. So I can put on two hats here, right? Hat number one, I'm obstructive, and I do not want to lose visibility of the fact that I've done a load of work. So I refuse to fix this problem, right? One way of looking at this. Or I'm a super developer who will make the code right no matter what, right? Obstructive is where I'm going. Reason being, visibility is key. Knowing what work went into software is really important. So I've identified in just looking at this that I've missed a component of user assignment, right? I've missed when I changed the ticket, right? Now, admittedly, I'm going a little bit ahead of myself here, right? Because I've written this. If I was analyzing this properly, what I would have said is, assigning a ticket, when do we do it? Right? So, was I doing this properly? And admittedly, I was doing this when I was talking to somebody else about writing this and the need for this, but I didn't do the due diligence on this story, right? And this is kind of the point of why I'm why I'm sharing this process, is because of this sort of stuff, right? This is stuff that I might make assumptions on, right? I might take this and be like, yeah, I should be able to assign a status to a ticket. I didn't say where. I didn't ask any questions. I mean, yeah, it's a misrequirement. It's a misrequirement. It's also a misunderstanding, right? Look where I've just gone to put it, right? I've just, I need to patch it, so I'm going to do it in here. I'm going to change all this. Yes, this is going to need to be done, but it needs to be done in here first. I don't have a status. Now, maybe the conversation goes, hey, it should default to open when it's created. It should never default to any other status. You shouldn't be able to create a ticket in progress. Oh, look, we got some rules, right? So, like Grumpy was asking about the rules, right? Like, are there any rules attached? Well, you've got to talk about this, right? You've got to discuss this. Doing this, I'm going to make assumptions, and I'm going to write code that isn't necessarily representative of what it should be. So I'm going to literally run through this conversation in a very small amount of time. Assumptions is the human problem, yeah. So, product manager creates this story. As a user, I should be able to assign a status to a ticket. Developers don't ask anything. They go and do exactly what I did right then. Oh, well, yeah, we should have. Oh, we've got to change this now. We've got to change this now. Oh, and they make a load of work. Product management say that you shouldn't be able to change the status of a story, right? Status of a ticket. It's all human forms. True. What tools is he providing to help with them, though? Yeah. But I made an assumption that it went in here, right? I didn't clarify that in part of this. So as a developer, when I'm sitting down and going through this, what I need to be making sure of is, where do they expect to see this, right? So what I should have got them to do is say, hey, And what I should have got me to do as I'm talking about this from my perspective to me, right? When a ticket is created, it should default to open, right? Rule. A user should be able to edit the ticket and remove the status and assign the status, right? Discovered requirements are real thing. If only I had isn't really fair. Yeah. But now, further questions, right? And again, this is why discussion matters. This is why getting stories way ahead of time matters, and making sure that you're an engaged developer, asking questions, challenging requirements, pushing back when you think that something's not right is useful. It's not obstructive. It's not a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. If your PMs are getting frustrated because you're asking questions and delaying stories, it's because they want the work through, right? Their goal is to get this work done and out to a customer, right? Your work is to safeguard putting crap out, because that crap, forgive my language, is representative of you and representative of the company. But, you know, different motivations. Incoming monkey wrench. A choice of open as the initial state versus new as the initial state assumes that tickets are by default should be acted upon by a developer. Yeah. Good point. So do we have a status, or do we have an earlier status that it sits in and waits for it to be dragged into, okay, now it can be worked upon? So the wording is such that it's the developer's problem. He doesn't have all the requirements. I agree. Right. So it's your job as a developer to make sure that the thing you're going into is well understood enough that, again, and it's why it's a team effort, right? Because you should be challenging these requirements and making sure that you're clear about what it is you're actually expected to do. Because here's the problem, right? As a user, I should be able to edit the ticket and assign a status. Okay. This only exists because I went ahead and prototyped it out, right? This doesn't exist in the code base that we're talking about in this ticket, right? So I should be able to edit the status, right? So essentially, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. And none of that exists, right? And technically that doesn't exist because that's a loss requirement anyway, because no one's actually tracking that we do that. I've had it in the past. Very few people of different disciplines actually speak the other discipline's language. Most devs don't speak the product or project dialects, for example. Right. Most products and project don't speak the dev dialect. And if they do, well, no. What I've experienced is product generally pick up on developers who are sitting there saying, oh, well, that's easy. We just do this, right? Never say just, it's just in front of product management. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing to do. Never say easy. No, never say anything's easy. Never say anything's just. It will always bite you. And I have had copy and paste stories because of saying stuff like that. Where they'll, oh, it's just this. Because again, if I'd have taken this story at face value, I would have implemented so much more code, right? There was an entire huge project cancelled and a person let go because of the phrase, well, it can. Yeah. And this is software development, right? But this is part of what you're doing as a software developer. If you're doing this for a profession, because the person, well, it can spoke of the potential to do something, and the product person thought it actually did that something. Yeah, being clear, right? And this is the entire focus of this, right? Is you have to be clear about what you're doing, and again, it's not obstructive, right? To push back and say, because again, I realized, oh, I'm not assigning the user here. And then I realized that I haven't done this, right? This code is imaginary. You're not really seeing any of this code because it doesn't exist. That is the word can, which you'd think we'd agreed upon, but no. Yeah. And the language, right? I can kind of see the point in having this structured in such a way that we can understand the same language, right? The ubiquitous language stuff is one thing, but having the code structured in a way that you can refer to it is yeah. Wouldn't viewed and be useful as is more beneficial to know if it's been seen and still not being worked on, or it hasn't been seen, uh, um, still not being worked on, or it hasn't been seen, both being classified under open. Not a bad point. Oh, that is definitely but that kind of ties into what Grumpy said about, is there another status before open, right? So, what is it? Zendesk has the concept of showing you who's looking at something. It actually shows you in real time who's actually got the ticket open. It kind of ties into that, right? So if I'm looking at a ticket, I'll actually tell anybody else in there that, oh, this person is actually viewing this as well, for that purpose, I think, where you can see if people are actually paying attention to it. Micromanagement enablement. Uh, it unfortunately it's the reality, and again, what I'm trying to do um, is improve visibility to the point where some of that micromanagement might not be necessary, but it is a reality of the way we as humans are. So again, people like statistics, they like numbers, they like to see things. Yeah. They like to see things moving, right? Things don't always move. And again, this is kind of, it's why I stopped and went back to this, right? Because I missed a requirement. Now, again, I didn't have this code. So in reality, when I talked about it, users should be able to edit the ticket and assign a status. Oh, we don't have the ability to edit. We never talked about that yet. Oh, what should we do? Right? So I've pulled this into in progress. That was a mistake, right? Accepting this story as one I could work on was a mistake, right? In reality, obviously for me, it's not a mistake because I can move forward. Um, but it is something you want to make sure that you don't allow to go through unless you're happy. It's why development teams should take ownership. Development teams should ask questions. You know, um, yeah, the concept of having it visible or seen, that definitely could be a thing, right? But it's worth discussing. It's worth understanding, and you've got to, even at this phase though, you still have to decide what is necessary, what is desired, what is now, what is later, right? You can dream up a whole set of features, right? And for me, the problem with this project is MVP, minimum viable product, is so far out because my viable product doesn't come until after I've gone past what Trello offers, right? If I just produce Trello, well, I'm producing Trello. I'm not doing anything beyond that, right? So I've got to do a lot more. If you have stories that you want worked on that currently aren't, one, there's probably too much in the pipeline, and two, you have to prioritize the work. Yeah, I'd like to put Terry in a pair with Roman. Oh joy. The ha 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 suggests that would be quite the challenge. Ah, gotcha. Joy. Many, many, many questions. Right. But again, you gotta kind of cut it off as what is dream, what is necessary. What do we? Well, we don't have edit, right? I don't have the ability to edit, right? So, um, what does this mean? What is the outcome of this story then? If I have to be able to assign a status, do I do that and neglect this stuff? Well, if I go off and make that decision on my own, um, then it's lost. Those requirements aren't captured. You've got to make sure there's visibility there, and that's kind of from that metrics, from that micromanagement perspective. That is actually the important thing. It's not necessarily that you're a complete hero and you got a story across, which they'll love, right? But that's cheating you out of the future, right? That's cheating you as a developer out of the ability to say in the future, no, we need to do this, right? Because you'll just do it. Why should they care about actually documenting that piece? Pairing with 3 months, don't notice as much. There's a time to pinch, which is what the project and product folk care most about. Yeah. So, what gets this story across? Well, I shouldn't have accepted the story because it was undefined, right? It was too open, right? At the point I identified that, well, we pointed it. So it's a team fail, right? It is a team fail. Not obviously, I'm not pointing in this version because this is I don't think I can actually add points onto these ones. But yeah, it's important that you at least discuss. So I'm going to be pragmatic here and move forward for the sake of moving forward and making progress on this piece so that this piece is behind me. But I'm not going to, but I need to get better at this stuff, right? I need to get better at defining these requirements ahead of time. What is the tracking thing you're using? This is JetBrains Space. I'm honestly good with the defining happening while the ticket is going on. Explanation up front obviously helps. You are until you're not. That's the problem, right? You are until it causes a problem because someone you've assumed something or you've put some code in place that you shouldn't have put in there because no one understood it was a part of the story, or the story now takes 3 times longer because you took on a little bit more than you should have done in defining what it means as it goes, right? So it's not about being obstructive, it's about visibility and about, telling the right story. I think what you're describing is more of a symptom of working on something for too long before getting feedback. Um, no, it's there are an endless number of devs who know exactly what to do with a vague ticket. Yeah, and it's accepting that vague ticket in the first place. You shouldn't accept a vague ticket. You should define what is expected of you, and you should understand the code enough to understand how relatively difficult that is, right? I'm assuming you're working in a decent enough environment that you're able to do that without too much risk. But I've worked in enough environments where that'll bite, and there's some places where I've seen people fired for screwing up and missing requirements or missing features and that assumption has been put on them, right? Right. The assumption that they'll just figure it out and get it done in an amount of time. Because again, management do not like this pointing concept. They kind of like the time-based thing because they can judge time. If the PRs get turned around quickly, feedback happens and you find out what's missing. Hopefully not by the customer, right? Hopefully by someone who understands what they're looking at. Again, it's a team effort. All software is a team effort, or it should be. But yeah, you could be easily pointing out a weakness and I don't perceive in our current system, right? If you have product that is willing to accept that you just got it done, right, and they don't care what, right? So here's a risk of what this is doing, right? I take this at face value. I implement this, even though it doesn't say to. I implement all this. Right, so we go in here, we go in, let's go in, proceed was what I was doing before. I was going to put an enums folder in here, but it's essentially the same thing. So, ticket status, right, public, enum. I've got a nice menu and I never use it. I always use class and then change it. Pending, open, in progress, closed. Right. To Grumpy's point of it kind of sits in pending. So it should default to we'll agree on pending, right? It can not be changed back to in pending. Right. Tickets only go forward, say. So I go and do this, right? And I know not really, it's about a third actually, right? And I obviously need to make some database changes. We're going to get into migrations and stuff there, so I can't really do this right this second. But the pending status, right, so if we do status equals ticket status dot pending, we add that on there. Ticket has now we've got a map. Yeah. That's why I don't like anything beyond nice clean data types. Never fits right in here, right? Because this is a data layer issue. So now that ticket status is not a data layer piece. So now it's got to be translated again into that. So for the sake of argument, for the sake of right now, just to put it in there, we're going to store that as an integer. I know it can be stored as an enumeration. It's fine. Right. 0, 1, 2, 3. Right. I now do that to make sure that that aligns, because it can never be 0, right? If I otherwise, when I mark it as open, it'll mark there's a default bug built in there, right? I now do all this, right? And then we get a support ticket, right? Because I just got told to update it. I made assumptions. I should be able to edit the ticket and assign the status, right? I did some stuff in there. They come back and say, it's wiping out the customer name or it's changing the customer name, right? And it shouldn't do that. Or the review date's moving, whatever. No, a ticket should not be broke. They being the customer, if I get it through, because if the product management is willing to accept that that is a ticket, the likelihood is they don't actually know what they're verifying or what they're testing, right? So when they verify it within the bounds of what they've got there. So they are really narrowly focused on it behaving a certain way. So they let it go out. Now the customer does something and sees some weird behavior, right? They now can change a customer name, but they couldn't do it before. And they're like, well, why did we change that? How do we change that? And it's not in here. It doesn't say that I should be able to change the customer name in here. It doesn't say that I should be able to change the review date in here. Right? Nothing in this ticket says I should be able to change the review date. It says I should change it in progress or close. So having that discussion, making sure that you're clear about what it's going to do, making sure that you're not adding work for yourself in the story or making assumptions about what should be there because you need it, looking at the stories way before you actually have to pick them up so that you can push back and say, actually, we don't have that in the code. I've looked at the code. It's not there. It's beneficial for everybody in the process, right? Hopefully they, as the other dev you're pairing with, where the feedback comes from is user. Yeah, a customer giving that feedback is really bad, right? If you're doing, but again, you shouldn't be making those pragmatic decisions to improve the software as you go. Fix a bug. If you identify a bug in the process, add a test, verify the bug, fix the bug. Absolutely. No problem with that. Clean up code. Absolutely. No issue with that. But don't add behavior into the system. Avoid working on the wrong thing so that you have an opportunity to avoid shipping the wrong thing. Yeah. There is stuff on where the customer understands and knows. And that's why a good product management team knows how to talk to the customer and identify the requirements. Right? Right. So a good cycle, a good way of relaying that information. I'm a big fan of things like user voice and stuff like that. So and letting developers see user voice. Not implementing what the customer's directly asking for, but PMs reviewing it, developers being able to see it, so they can see what customers are complaining about, and understanding that here's why we're making those decisions will help engagement. And I will recycle my common phrase is that the customer cannot tell you what they want, they cannot tell them what is wrong. Right, which is again why you should iterate quickly, why you should build software in such a manner that you are willing to change it. Do not build software that is rigid in an environment like this, right? If you're building software on your own, write your code. If you're learning, learn. Don't worry about trying to adhere to every single thing that we're discussing in this stream, right? It's not about why is my screen blinking? My screen's somehow picked up a flicker, and I've got burning on the bottom of the screen as well from the taskbar. Don't build the pyramids. Yeah, yeah. But if you're building software, if you're learning, just write software. Find a tool. Find something fun to write. There's different. This is a whole different level of software development than stuff at home. And says he sat at home writing code on the stream. Hey, actually, how you doing? Been a while. How's things? So yeah, it's. I've got too much in this. I'm gonna do this, right? I'm gonna make the changes, but I shouldn't do it, right? Doing all right. How are you? I'm good. I'm good. Getting some software written. About to start the day job. I found like this 719 window is a really productive window. I'm really enjoying my streams. I'm able to keep up with the schedule. Doesn't interfere with anything else. And yeah, it's I will say thank you for those people who are following on YouTube. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions, any thoughts, you're more than welcome to share them. The people that join the stream on a daily basis now is very much appreciated. If I'm understanding what you're saying, you're following the philosophy of Einstein's razor, aka the simple answer that requires least alteration is usually the correct one. Pretty much. It's I have no idea, but the philosophy, regardless, is go with simple code. Write the least amount of code to do the thing you need to do. Test it, and be willing to change it quickly. Right? You don't want to keep chasing complicated code. So in half an hour, I have a new meeting with a dietitian from the new provider of wellness that my job is providing me. I'm going to try not to be too much of a jerk about the fact that I've lost 110 pounds since April without dieting. 110 pounds. Wow, that's amazing. Congrats. I haven't seen your stream in a long time. I saw you. No, I saw you a couple of months ago, I think. Yeah, your IKEA hat. Yeah, 110. I wouldn't have said you lost 110 pounds. That's amazing. That's fantastic. I never thought I'd probably got a 25 pound. Nice. Yeah, we sit at computers, or you know, we're at computers all day, pretty much every day, and it's easy to lose track of that healthy part. That you need to get up, you need to walk around, you need to move, and stay healthy. I really should. I really want to get into getting the dogs to go for longer walks, and that's a bit of a pain still because they're puppies. Um, but as they get bigger, I want to be able to take them on longer walks, and I can start listening to podcasts and stuff again. Just walking. Um, I've actually managed to keep myself in pretty decent shape just walking the dogs while I was out from karate for a while. Yeah, £50 last year. The new insurance wouldn't cover the meds, helping me lose weight, and got a pretty solid. Oh, yeah. Ouch. Yeah, we all need to look after ourselves a bit better. Okay. So we are. Um, Calorie count, logging. I'm a great deal lighter, still depressed. Eating oranges instead of nachos, for example. Yeah, that's generally a good positive thing, right? No, no. Exercise can help you though raise it a little bit. It can actually help, but the older you get, the harder that is because the exercise can also injure you, which then does the reverse. So having I injured my knee in August. I sprained the knee, so I couldn't do karate, which then negatively impacted my mental well-being. I got back to karate, um, and of late I've been watching more development streams, but more game dev streams, and found a really good bunch of cannies from that group, um, and just a generally more positive outlook on things. And I've been super productive with my software development stuff, and it's felt really good. A recumbent exercise bike is a half an hour while playing Animal Crossing. Nice. That's got to be helping your mental health. How can you not smile while playing something like Animal Crossing? All right, it's midnight for me right now, so I'm going to sleep. Have a good time. Thank you all. Take care. Have a great day tomorrow. 300 calories per wagon that burns drinking a litre. Yeah. No. No, weed to be found on the whole island. Nice. Okay. So I'm gonna finish this up here quickly. So this is one of those things I don't like doing because it nice. Welcome to the Discord. A shock. Um, this is kind of a mapping exercise because that doesn't map neatly with right uh that. So it's like yeah. But we're gonna do it that way for right a second. So that ticket status doesn't pull in because this ticket status is um I'm gonna rename this one. Uh status status. Oh, it's because that's called status. I can't name that. The problem with having something, so this cannot go over to the other side, right? This is a API layer concern, not a a concern of the application, but it needs to be translated into pretty much the same enumeration to work properly, right? And that's because that's parameter details. I can move that out to aid in readability. Nope, that one. Okay, so that one imports because that one's using that enums, and this one's using the full namespace. Or avoiding naturals is decreasing calories per calorie. Yeah, calorie counting I struggle with. Not something I enjoy doing. I just try to keep my exercise higher and make sure I'm walking more frequently, make sure I'm getting up and moving around. I have a standing desk, so that helps me move more because I don't like standing for too long. So there's all sorts of little things to do. But anyway, I have to finish. So here's where we're going to leave today. So obviously I'm going to go ahead and do this piece, right? I'm going to implement it this way for right now. That's actually going to be that nullable. Yeah, that's nullable. So that will be null. Why don't you do that? I don't want to throw an argument. We'll figure that out afterwards anyway. So this will map over to the application layer. The application layer will test to see if everything's null before it actually assigns it, which will allow us to patch in the status. So if we just send status up, then we're fine. Everything else will be null. So we can just make modifications that way. Whether that's a useful API, I don't know. We'll have to come back around on that one. If I just walk 3 hours a day, I could eat nachos again, considering it. It's not. So for me, it's more about don't eat nachos every week, but have them as a treat once a month, or something like that, right? Have a treat day or have a treat every now and then, and be more disciplined on the day to day. Because I think that sort of stuff, messes with your head a bit more if you're depressed or you're counting down, yeah. Right. Yeah. But that is what it is, unfortunately. Sometimes you gotta eat. And just because it's not good doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're giving up on everything. So but yeah. Anyway. I have to finish up. I have to get off the stream because I've got to get to work. But I want to say thank you very much for everyone coming hanging out, for chatting. This has been a fun stream. Thank you for the follow, Alt. I thought I said that. I think I said that before. I will be streaming again tomorrow, 719. I'll be continuing on with this effort. I'm actually going to meet with my friend this evening, I believe. So we will be talking about next stories. So I hope to have a little bit more to go over tomorrow. So yeah, I think that's where we are right now. And yeah, so I don't have anyone on my follow list. I have a lot more game developers recently, which isn't necessarily a natural switch over for us to go to from this stream. But I should raid with 10 people. It's useful to raid and introduce it to someone that maybe you're not following. So let's go over to Clayman Dev. Clayman is developing games. And let's raid over there. Tyndall's in there, so that's good. So yeah, I'll raid you over there. Thank you very much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow. Game or not? Yeah, there you go. And it's a good group I've found recently. That I've been linked to several streams that I never experienced before, and there's a really nice group of people out there that I found again, getting back into streaming. So, everyone have a great rest of your day. I will be back tomorrow. Hopefully, we can hang out again. So, thank you for joining me. I need to bring up a stream deck and do that, and I'll see you again. Take care. Have a great day, bye.